Bizarre Brain Comics. It's clobbering time! Hello. This is Gary here for Bizarre Brain Comics. Please excuse me if I have any slur, anything like that to my speech. I had some dental work done earlier and the anesthetic has not completely worn off. This is where I like to take a look at some older comics and talk a little bit about the characters and the creators, and then break down stories and the art. And today, what I want to talk with you about is the Fantastic Four. This is a reprint of Fantastic Four number 232 from 1981, written and drawn by John Byrne. Now, those of us who are longtime comic book fans know that the Fantastic Four made their first appearance in Fantastic Four number 1 in 1961, created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. Now, Stan Lee has always said that at that time he was getting tired of doing the monster stuff and similar stuff in comics at the time, and was getting close to quitting his job. And he says that his wife told him, said, "Well, why don't you write a story the way you want to tell a story. Tell a story the way you want to tell a story." So he said, so he did, and the result was the Fantastic Four. However, the origin of the Fantastic Four bears a very strong similarity to the origin story of DC Comics' Challengers of the Unknown from just a couple years before. Also created by Jack Kirby. Except the Challengers came out of their little mishap without superpowers, whereas the Fantastic Four, having been exposed to the cosmic radiation, they returned with superpowers. And of course, the Challengers banded together, knowing that they were living on borrowed time, hence the hourglass symbol that they wore on their uniforms, to face challenges and menaces to humanity, just using their own strength and ingenuity. Well, the Fantastic Four were somewhat similar. Except they had the superpowers, and they banded together. They were already basically a family, and then even their first appearance was basically a monster story, which Marvel was so well known for at the time, Atlas. And of course, that first issue heralded in the Marvel Age of Comics. And of course, as I said, this one was written and drawn by John Byrne. And I talked about John Byrne before in the ROG 2000 episode as like one of his earliest published pieces. and that was for Charlton Comics. Now here, this is from nearly a decade later, when he was had become a very hot property for both writing and art, and he really liked the Lee Kirby era of the Fantastic Four, which lasted for several years, and they probably did it the best. And I personally feel that so much of that is due primarily to Jack Kirby, both his artwork and his plotting. If you read that stuff, it really bears the hallmark of oftentimes the hallmark of Jack Kirby's type of stories that he created himself. But that's not to discount Stan Lee, because he often came up with the basic plot, not the basic storytelling, and then also came up with the scripting, and which is dialogue, and a lot is owed to the dialogue for the distinctive voices of each of the characters. So John Byrne was a big aficionado of that era, and he really tried to replicate that as much as he could in the Fantastic Four, in so much as he even did a monster story in the old I can't speak, Atlas Marvel vein from the 50s, having a flashback scene in one story, not in this one, of course, to before their power-giving accident, in which there was a monster menace of some kind, and Reed Richards had to come up with and defeat this particular creature. But as I recall, in that story, he had no memory of it until somehow it was that memory was jarred, and then the whole story was told in flashback, and it was told very similarly to the Lee Kirby monster stories. And of course, Fantastic Four started out as monsters anyway. In fact, they didn't even have regular costumes until I think it was the third issue. I'm not positive, as people wanted to see them in costumes. They just had caps and kind of dungaree type uniforms, not unlike the early Challengers of the Unknown. So let us go visit the Fantastic Four as they face down this particular menace. Okay, there you go. Now you can better see the image of that John Byrne cover of the Fantastic Four, which was, and here it is reproduced as that cover from 232, 1981. And there's the cover, reproduction of the cover of issue number 1. And so I wanted to show you this. If you have, of course, these True Believers, these were special, like $1 reprints from several years ago. This is 2018, I think. This was in conjunction with some and promotion for some large books reprinting the adventures of the Fantastic Four. Of course, this here is all Lee Kirby, including the Inhumans, and dealing with the coming of Galactus and the first appearance of Galactus Herald, the Silver Surfer. And so I wanted to show you that, and I want to show you this too, because here is someplace I have other reprints. Here's also in mini form reproduction of Fantastic Four #1 in the little black and white comic book. This is from Family Dollar stores. These were for Halloween give-outs, Halloween trick-or-treat giveaways. And this reprints the stories from the first 3 issues. And yes, indeed, it was issue #3 when they first appeared in the Fantastic Four uniform. And they're flying along in their pogo plane. And of course, this is all Lee Kirby stuff. And as I said, you can clearly see it's a monster story, because the main menace was the Mole Man, who controlled these monsters and attacked New York. The Mole Man's secret. I see all these monsters, and I love the monster stuff. Fantastic Four captured. I think this is the first appearance of the Skrulls, I think. Yeah, Skrulls. And the Super Skrull. The Flame That Died. And who was this menace? The Miracle Man. And too bad it doesn't have the first appearance of Dr. Doom in there. And okay, so let us take a little look. Oh, and you could tell I was doing Fantastic Four, because you saw there at the beginning the introduction with my little friend Rocky Grimm heralding the way. Here we go. And back to the basics. And here we see this villain of some kind here with these little miniature images of the Fantastic Four. Looks like he's doing some kind of magical stuff. He's actually Diablo, and he's an alchemist. And he's got these other little figurines here, which you can't make out any details of, and you never do. And he's going to use them to defeat the Fantastic Four. Meanwhile, he's staying in this apartment. Lady coming up here complaining about the smells. There's the landlady, and he's able to disguise himself as this chubby little old man. And then as soon as she's gone, he's back to his tall, slender self. So the story gets started with Sue Storm in a beauty parlor getting her hair done, when suddenly something happens outside. Boom! And this thing that kind of resembles the Thing himself comes up out of the ground, and he says he's after Sue Storm. So she quickly changes attire to her Fantastic Four uniform as he smashes in and blasts her with dirt, which then encases her in a stony substance, and she can't move. Then we switch to Ben Grimm, the Thing, as he and Alicia are leaving a Broadway theater after watching The Elephant Man, and he's touched. He's even got a little bit of a tear in his eye. She's saying how, and suddenly he's being rained on. What the hell? Well, all the rotten luck. Now I'm suddenly getting rained on. But Alicia says, no, there's no rain. Oh, it's just on him. And then all the rain becomes one big glob of water with Ben Grimm in the middle. And he can't get out and he can't breathe because he's engulfed in water. And he tries to dig his way through the bottom, but the water stays with him. He can't get out. He's about to run out of air, and then he'll drown. Uh-oh. So then we cut again to Johnny Storm flying over the Human Torch, flying over Central Park, and comes to a landing to meet his girlfriend, what's her name? Frankie Ray. And she likes Johnny, but she's not thrilled with the torch. And then suddenly, what this? It's like a tornado. They're being whipped around and picked up. Frankie is dropped to the ground, and Johnny Storm is stunned. Then we have another quick cut of scene, and you see all this storytelling, the beautiful storytelling, artwork, and great draftsmanship. Jack Kirby, I mean, you can see Jack's on my mind. John Byrne, he was a master at the storytelling. You can really see it here, down here, coming up to the Baxter Building. Inside the Baxter Building, in one of his laboratories, Reed Richards he's trying to track. He's got some kind of strange radio energy emissions. He's trying to figure out what it is and where it's coming from. And then you see him. It seems unusually hot. I wonder why. And you can see beads of sweat on his brow. So he stretches his arm over to a switch, going to open one of the windows to try to cool it off because the AC doesn't seem to be able to keep up with it. Opens the window and whoosh, all this flame comes in. What the heck? Is that the torch? No. It's a being composed entirely of flame, shooting fireballs at him, and he's dodging and weaving and round, trying to get away. And you can see the entire top floors of the Baxter Building is engulfed in flames, just around it, not in it. So Reed is bouncing around, and he bounces out the window and through the flames and on down. You can see it's all this great storytelling, especially like the way things progress. You can see it close up, and you can see that, and then whoosh, there it is. Then he flattens himself out so he can glide and coast on the air. And he needs to get away from the other buildings so that they don't pose a menace to these other skyscrapers. Ah, yes, go to the park. And there's Frankie Ray. She calls after Mr. Richards. Come on, there's something terrible happening with Johnny. Some kind of a whirlwind. And Johnny's being attacked by this whirlwind being. Well, what the heck? And he says, Reed says, this is this whirlwind. I'll tackle that. You tackle the flaming guy. And Johnny quickly flames on, and then they're off and running in a running combat. Meanwhile, we see Reed tangling himself up amongst the whirlwind, which is attacking him. Then back to the scene with Sue. Well, she can't move, encased in that rocky crust, but she generates an invisible force field around her body and it expands it so it just smashes through. Then she creates a force field to keep the monster away from her, and meanwhile pushing her out. This is where the first time she thought, oh, hey, I never thought of that before. I can use my force fields as a means of transportation, kind of like Iceman. There she is, makes a little invisible chair for herself, and it just whisks her away. And there she goes, whisked away by her force field, on her force field. And then she's trying to find Ben Grimm, because Ben and Alicia, I know they were coming to a theater down here somewhere. And there's back to Ben. He's still engulfed in the water, and he spots a sporting goods store, and they have scuba gear. So he smashes his way into the sporting goods store, and quickly there he can either speak or gesture to what he needs, but the one guy panics, but the lady assistant, Sheev, instantly figures out what the deal is. She grabs the one tank that has air in it and gives Ben some air. Whoosh. Then the water, whoosh, takes on the form of a humanoid being and says, "Ah, very clever, very clever." So then he engulfs the lady that helped him. So Ben is in a dilemma because it turns out that was the only tank with air. So regardless of the threat to himself, he gives the lady the air, and whoosh, the water tries to engulf him again, but it comes in contact with Sue's force field. And then she stops it and holds it in check inside one of her force fields. Then she says, "I got a problem outside for you." And he goes out, says, "Hey now, that's more like it. Him I can hit. It's clobbering time." And he really clobbers that Rocky dude. But he quickly comes back together in the form of a giant fist and does a number on Ben. But it's not enough to put him out. Meanwhile, Rita's really tangling with that wind and that whirlwind, and he's thinking the whole time. He's figuring out these are basic the elementals. The four, he's not sure yet, but he's getting to it. When he gets here and he sees the Rocky guy, and he says, "There must be the water. Sue, do you have the water elemental?" The water elemental. Yeah, he's right there. So he knows the four basic elements, ancient elements. There were fire, air, earth, and water. So he grabs some. There's a generator for some construction nearby. He grabs cables from that. Has Sue release the water elemental, and then zaps him right off the bat with those cables, which through a system of electrolysis converts the water molecules into their basic gas components, oxygen and hydrogen. So he's gone, and then he comes up with he sees what needs to be done. Tells Ben you need to change their state of matter. So Ben reaches through the ground for a water pipe and sprays the rock guy, and he turns to mud and then disappears because he's become liquid. Then they got the air elemental, and he says, "You got to compress it." And she struggles to compress that sphere of force field till it's compressed so tight that the air inside is forced into its liquid state under such high pressure, and then poop, it's gone. So okay, now there's just Johnny and the fire elemental, and there they are flying around, whizzing, boom, 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 flaming at each other to no avail. So finally he figures this out. He's just flame, whereas Johnny produces flame. So he goes way up in the atmosphere, and then he gets hotter and hotter and hotter until almost his nova heat, which uses up all the oxygen in the area, which puts out the fire elemental. But then Johnny, he's way up there, and he's got quite a ways to fall. And he's exhausted. But once he gets oxygen enough, he manages to flame enough to keep himself from falling too fast and able to direct his fall towards the water. So sploosh, he's safely landed in the water and hitches a ride with a passing tugboat. Then they get back. He's made a call and informs the rest of the FF in the Baxter building, and that he's okay. Said, but he's got an idea. He knows who their menace is, and they also know that he needs some help. So he goes to get some help. Meanwhile, Diablo, he realizes that his elementals have not returned, so they've met with failure, and he takes it on the lam just in time to be caught by Mr. Fantastic himself, and sees, yep, there they are. I contacted Interpol, and you're wanted in connection with theft of some certain valuable statues from various museums, and they were statues of the elements, the elementals. And so while there's nothing that they can arrest him for in the United States, they can turn him over to Interpol, and for possessing, transporting stolen property, and probably the theft thereof. And then he acknowledges he found him with the aid of Dr. Strange, Dr. Adam Strange. So they take off with their prisoner and thanking Dr. Strange, and said, anytime you need a favor. And that is the end of this story. And then the teaser, next issue, Mission for a Dead Man. Ha ha ha. Yeah. It's fun. It's fun. Good artwork. I mean, it's John Byrne. He's always good artwork. He's good visual storytelling. The writing is really snappy. I like the way it cuts away and then it comes back. All these things that were happening at the same time. It wasn't like there was a time lapse, and it was all the attacks happened at the same time. And I think this was because John Byrne is a good writer. Okay, and thank you for joining me with my little escapade into the Fantastic Four. I really liked that. And I hope you did too. So thank you for joining me. And please like, share, and subscribe. Please leave a comment if you got one. I don't mind. We'll see you next time. Remember, comics are art.